Thank you all for joining us. My name is Erasma Beras-Monticciolo, and I am your host for Powering Up with Power of Two, in which we engage with community leaders, residents, and community advocates to talk about the pressing issues affecting families and children in New York City and the steps that we can each take as individuals and as a collective to ensure the health and well-being of our communities. A couple of reminders before we begin. We make this video accessible in Spanish, so stay tuned for that. We also encourage you to share your questions with us in the chat. Today, we want to raise awareness about food insecurity in the United States. Food insecurity, as defined by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, is a lack of consistent access to enough food for an active, healthy life. We would think that in a nation as prosperous as ours, there would be no such thing as food insecurity. However, in 2020, an estimated 1 in 8 U.S. citizens were food insecure. That's approximately 38 million Americans, including 12 million children. According to studies conducted by the American Psychological Association, household food insecurity has serious effects on the health and development of young children, including increased hospitalizations, poor health, iron deficiency, development risk, and behavior problems, including anxiety, depression, attention deficit disorder, and more. These effects can have long-term implications. And the ongoing pandemic has compounded this issue. In New York, for example, according to City Harvest, 1 in 4 children or more than 462,000 children are experiencing food insecurity. That's a 46% increase over pre-COVID figures. In response, new organizations and community groups such as pop-up food pantries, community fridges, and mutual aid networks evolved to connect families and individuals to food. New York City also mobilized a suite of emergency food operations, Get Food NYC, for example, aimed to combating the dramatic increase in food insecurity. However, that program ended in October 2021. And so the elimination of New York City food relief programs has put even more strain on smaller organizations. One organization that was created in 2020 to respond to the pressing need and continues to fill the food access gap is the East Brooklyn Mutual Aid. Today, we are delighted to host East Brooklyn Mutual Aid co-founder, Kelvin Taitt. Before founding the East Brooklyn Mutual Aid, Kelvin served as the Director of Strategic Growth and Operations at the Corbin Hill Food Project, a New York City nonprofit dedicated to distributing local farm fresh food, especially to low-income communities and communities of color. He also served as the Director of Operations at Brooklyn Packers, a worker-owned and Black-led food distribution cooperative, and he remains an equity owner. Kelvin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So happy to have you here. So, usually when I invite guests on this show, I always like to ask them this important questions to make sure that folks are able to connect with the individual. So that first question to you is, what is your personal connection to this work?
That's an interesting question. So before we started this work, or what led me to start this work, is I've always been engaged in this community, the communities that I live in, because I believe that our communities deserve every opportunity to thrive that is possible. When I moved here, I was involved in volunteering at soup kitchens and working with nonprofit organizations and homeless shelters to provide any type of support possible because they were resources that I had access to. At the beginning of the pandemic, I contracted COVID and I myself was sick and I was food insecure. After I recovered and some neighbors in my family took care of me, I wanted a way to give back. And 2 of my neighbors came to me and asked if I wanted to be involved. And for me, it was an immediate yes. I was sick and I, made it through and I survived, and many folks didn't have that same opportunity. And I didn't have food, and I knew that there were other people in my community, especially in my neighborhood, that were going through the same things and they needed support. And it wasn't about me. It was about how can we support others and ensure that we're all taken care of because we were all in it together.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Kelvin. It's often said that the personal is political, and we
Mhm.
see that in your response that it really truly is, right? It's based on, we're motivated into action based on our experience and also based on what we see is impacting our
Right.
neighbors. And so, mutual aid groups are typically volunteer led and
Mhm.
unincorporated, right? Generally emphasizing an egalitarian way of providing
Right.
support and resources with no strings attached. Can you talk a little bit about um, why adopting this model was so important for the community?
Yeah, well, we needed to make decisions and we needed to impact people on the ground immediately without having to go through levels and levels and levels of red tape. And everything that we did was actionable and it
Mm,
was plain and simple. Folks needed food now. They didn't have time to sign up for programs and wait for approval and provide documents and wait for phone interviews. They needed support right away. Not saying that those programs aren't beneficial, but not at that moment. And we saw that there was a need, and we acted. For us, the process of even starting a nonprofit is 6 months to a year.
mhm.
In many cases, and we didn't have that kind of time, so we formed as a volunteer-led group. We made decisions together. We met every Monday or every other Monday. I saw that we were heading in a direction where we were building sustainability, and we really needed strong decision making and strong, guidance. And I sought some of our strongest volunteers and ones who were committed from many different areas and backgrounds, and I put a board together. And we were led by that before we decided to incorporate. But that board, took into consideration all of the volunteers' thoughts, and we had many different committees, and we were truly acting as a community, and all voices were heard, and that was the best way for us at the time.
Thank you. Yeah, it's interesting because the way you're describing the work to me sounds like justice work, right? It's
It
justice.
is.
Yeah, and it reminds me of prison abolitionist Mariam Kaba, and she once referenced like the carpool and rideshare system that Martin Luther King Jr. set up, that actually brought down or brought an
Mm,
end to the segregation bus system in Montgomery, as a shining example of the power of mutual aid to
yeah.
bring about systemic change. And so, in listening to you talk, I'm curious if you see your mutual aid network as part of the abolitionist movement.
I would say yes. I would say that a lot of work that we are doing absolutely is justice work. And when we first started, it was we were banding together as a community for purpose,
Mm,
and we were being very intentional about the work that we were doing in the neighborhoods that we were serving, and saving space for all of the different types of people and the issues and problems that we have here, and also healing at the same time. So absolutely, I would say that.
awesome. Thank you for that. Um, so we've seen how the pandemic has evolved, many times over the
Mhm.
course of the last 2 years, and
Right.
we're seeing like wide increases and decreases in confirmed cases, and with many considering the pandemic to be over and having shifted to this idea of an endemic, right?
Right.
How has your work adapted to these changes from like the beginning in 2020 to now?
Well, in the beginning, for us, it was very simple. It's just we were buying and delivering groceries to those who were affected by COVID, and it was that was our time frame. We were here. We started in April of 2020. However long COVID was to last, we were going to ensure that neighbors had groceries, and we were doing that. And there were many times where we thought we were coming to an end. And then there were other times where we completely ran out of money and we were almost forced to end. But we've decided that our communities suffered this way before the pandemic, and without the proper resources, support, and policy changes, we will continue to do that unless we step in and make changes and make things happen and move things forward. There are a lot of talented individuals and advocates and stakeholders in our communities, and we've realized our power and coming together as one, and how safe but dangerous we can be,
Mm,
to make changes in this world, and we're doing it.
yeah. So Um, just putting on my science hat here and my researcher's hat here. Community solidarity during emergencies and disasters is quite common, right? And we've seen that
Hmm.
lots of studies have shown that such solidarity behaviors tend to be really strong during emergency, and then over
Yeah.
time kind of like decline, right? Even though let's say need still remains high. And so I'm curious to hear from you, like, how do you foresee sustaining, EBMA over time of in the context in which we live right now, right? So this ongoing pandemic in our communities, right? And then all of the crazy that's happening in the world.
Well, what we're seeing from the pandemic, and specifically what we're seeing in food, is not new. Our communities lack access and availability to fresh and affordable and healthy food. And for us, looking at sustainability was how do we provide this consistent access? And that's when we started looking at grocery stores, and our communities owning and running our own grocery stores, and building, jobs for the communities, and teaching folks about economics. And, we decided that that was something that we wanted to be a part of doing. And talking with a bunch of other community stakeholders, the conversation of community or neighborhood food hubs came up, where we can have a place that is storage facilities, because we realized during the pandemic no one had storage. There was
Mm-hmm.
no cold storage anywhere. Trucks upon trucks would come into our neighborhood with tons of food, refrigerated trucks, and we had to move those things within the day, and some of it within the hour, because there was a lack of refrigeration in cold storage. So sustainability for us is, if this were to happen again, how can we be better prepared? The city didn't have a plan. They are developing one now. There's a 10-year food policy plan that is in place, that has been
Mm-hmm.
informed along with community stakeholders. And we thought that it was for us to start building those things in our community. How can we be involved? How can we rally other community members to take this seriously? Because food is the root.
Mm-hmm.
If we look at our health and nutrition, what we put in our bodies is absolutely connected to our health, and our wellness, spiritually, mentally. And we want to be a part of changing that narrative.
That's
And
right.
how do we create that? And it's access. And it may not
Yeah.
be a grocery store, it may be something else, but for us it was like, you know have we look at our communities, and you look at the radius of folks, and then you look at how many grocery stores and fresh food markets there are, and then you look at the types of food that's within those stores, and what we have access to, and then what the possibilities of things that we can have access to. There are a lot of, like, Eric Adams, our mayor, is very plant focused and plant forward. And I commend him for standing up for something new, and allowing our neighborhoods to see that there are other ways to sustain our bodies with food.
Mm. Yeah, I think JFK talked about food as liberation, right?
Mm,
So if you have access to food is liberating, because you have access to choice. You have access to, create a system that is healthy for yourself. And so a lot of our community members, unfortunately, don't have that level of access to healthy foods.
food
So
is
I have,
medicine too.
that's right. It's food is medicine. It's healing.
Yeah,
That's right. It
yeah,
can be.
absolutely.
So I have a two-part question related to what you said, right? Because I think we received a couple of questions about how is it that you're storing food. So there's that question, right? People are curious, like how are you doing this?
Right.
But I also have a question about the 10-year food policy plan. But let's tackle the food storage question first that came actually. Let's see, from Logan. Where do mutual aid organizations store their food?
Well, I can't speak for all of them,
Okay.
but I can speak for us. When we first started, we were fortunate enough to be able to utilize a church in our community, the community that I lived that had refrigeration. And we had 5,000 square feet of storage for dry and pantry goods, and then we had refrigeration. We then moved to a warehouse facility in East Brooklyn, and we had a 40 foot refrigerated container, that City Harvest donated and was paying for. So we stored food in there. And currently, we have partnered with the Christian Cultural Center, and they're allowing us to use some of their space and their refrigeration. So we've been working with them. We've worked with many other organizations like Collective Fare and their culinary kitchen. So we always make sure that we have proper refrigeration, and we're working with organizations that are accredited and that have food safety standards, proper food handling as well.
Great. So then, am I to understand that you're providing both access to fresh food and produce, and also shelf-stable items?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you. And then back to the 10-year food policy plan. Based on all of your experience, right? And you've had a lot of experience in this particular issue. Can you tell us your thoughts on this food policy plan? Like, do you see it as progressive and thoughtful and inclusive of what you think is going to really fill the gap and fill the need? Or do you think that more needs to be done?
More will always need to be done. I don't think that this work will stop with a 10-year food policy plan. I think that there will need to be changes and evaluations the entire way through. I also feel that the Mayor's Office of Food Policy is making a very concerted effort to ensure that there's inclusion from all communities and all stakeholders all throughout New York City, and that they're taking all recommendations, and that they're looking at all sides of it. I'm also part of a fellowship with the Mayor's Office of Food Policy and Urban Design Forum, exploring, food equity in the built environment across all 5 boroughs of New York City. And all 25 of the cohorts are from different backgrounds, from architecture, urban agriculture, food justice work, community organizing, Department of City Planning. I mean, we're looking at every different community, and we're looking at all of the existing infrastructure and really evaluating what folks need, what the communities need, community by community basis, evaluating, recommending. We're entering into another phase where we're actually implementing projects that we feel could help with the sustainability and help with the implementation of this policy plan. So there's work that's being done. I'm hopeful for it. I support anything that shows progress, and it's actionable. You have to start and try to know if it's going to work. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, that is true, right? And I'm so glad to hear that you're part of that conversation. And I love what gets me really excited is that from what you've shared so far, that it's not a blanket approach, right? So it's not like, okay, this has worked in this community, so we're going to do it this way, but it's really looking at each community individually and intentionally, and really understanding what the specific needs are, right? So, are there food deserts? Are there access to specific foods and not others? And how can we make sure that, it's more
appropriate?
Exactly. So that's very exciting to hear. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
So, we've received lots of questions about how can community residents become involved in the work that you're doing?
Easy. They can visit our website and sign up to volunteer. We have many volunteer opportunities. We have folks on our intake team. Those are the ones responsible for calling our neighbors and asking if they need food, or if they need support, taking in those requests and then passing them off. We are in constant need of delivery drivers to ensure that neighbors are getting the groceries delivered to them, especially our seniors and the ones that are shut in. We are packing often, so we're looking for folks to come out and help us pack groceries for the delivery drivers to take out. There are communications volunteers, folks on our social media team. So there's always ways to help the community, and we'll always make space for someone with an idea or talents or skills that they want to provide to us.
Okay, wonderful. And so at the end of this segment, we will put up an actual slide so that folks can reach out and connect directly with all of you. Can you walk us through kind of like the eligibility criteria for your services?
There isn't any. Well, let's say this. As long as you live in the areas that we deliver to,
Mhm.
which is Ocean Hill, Brownsville, East New York, Cypress Hills, Starrett City, Canarsie, Flatlands, parts of Flatbush, parts of Bed-Stuy and Crown Heights, within a certain radius, you're eligible to receive food if you need it. Food is a
Mhm.
human right. You shouldn't have to qualify to receive food.
Mm. Mm. Okay. Love that. Love to hear that. And is there kind of like a cap on how much food a family receives?
No, we try to provide enough food for the family to last a week to 2 weeks. During the winter seasons, it's a little bit more difficult to get the leafy greens in New York because of the cold weather. So there's a lot of root vegetables, but we've tried to provide at least enough that we can. In the summer and the springtime, you will get an abundance if we have them from our farmers. We support Black farmers, and we ensure that we buy as much as we can from them, because they deserve to the economic development and the market opportunities as well. Our Black farmers are not getting enough support from our communities, and I think that we can do a lot better, and we're doing that.
That's great to hear. And a lot of folks in our community sometimes experience homelessness, right?
Right,
Or they're transient folks, and so
right,
um, may not have consistent access to, let's say, internet, or
yep,
may have challenges in terms of
right.
specific food that is available within the shelter. And so, how do these folks access your services?
So we work with a lot of community organizations, and one in particular is Collective Fare. They're a cafe and chef collective, and they provide warm meals, prepared meals for us to deliver to neighbors that are unable to prepare meals for themselves.
Mm.
So for the folks that are in the shelters, we work with them to provide them meals as well, and then we also get items that are shelf stable and easy to open. A lot of times they're not allowed to have can openers or things in that in there. So things that are pop top or pull open, things that are a bag and can be held without being refrigerated. But we make sure that folks get anything that they need, and we think outside of the box to ensure that we're creative in making sure that folks have you know proper health, proper nutrition, and sometimes some treats.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah.
So there are a couple of questions that are coming in
Okay.
from
Let's do
the
it.
audience. I think someone is in the Bronx, um, and she says she serves. Yeah, okay. So Yvette, is there a resource
Okay.
list in the Bronx and Manhattan where families can get help? So I guess Yvette is having a tough time identifying some potential support for families in the Bronx and Manhattan.
I can say that we have done some amazing work with other mutual aid groups across all of the boroughs. Specifically for the Bronx, South Bronx Mutual Aid is outstanding. They have also recently incorporated, so they can continue doing their work and continue to serve their communities. I know for a fact that during the horrific Bronx fire, they were on the front lines with all types of resources. Also, if you visit Mutual Aid NYC, you'll get a full list of all of the mutual aid groups and where they're located and what services they provide.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Um, what do you think is, I'm just thinking about technology, right? And what is the role do you think that technology plays in enabling the formation of mutual aid networks? Um, is it allowing you all to do entirely like new things, or old things at just greater speed and scale than before? Like what are you finding?
Well, as things increase and there's much more of a need, we have to increase the technology that we use as well. I mean, we use technology for everything, taking in information, sending it off to either our community needs team or our delivery team, our routing team to be able to route the delivery so our drivers are not driving in zigzags all across East Brooklyn. So we're always looking at ways to be more efficient and to be more coordinated. Ultimately, when we are involved in our neighborhood food hub, technology will play a large role in that, because it'll help coordinate all of our community resources when it comes to food and interrelated needs as well. We're looking at working with technological organizations to help us increase our capacity as well and to help us be more, future focused.
Mm, yeah. Okay. One of the things that I was curious about because I think Andrew shared with me that you all are thinking about shifting towards a co-op model. So can you tell me what that means and what does that mean for the residents of Ocean Hill, Brownsville, East New York, Stark Cities, basically all of the different neighborhoods that you currently support?
Yeah, we're exploring a few different things, and we want to have a model where our communities are in control of our food system. So we're working with many different partners to develop what works specifically for this community, and also the educating our neighbors on the equity of our food and our food system and how they can be involved in there. Our food hub will be a consortium of community stakeholders and organizations that will come together, from local food entrepreneurs to local vendors, to culinary experts and entrepreneurs, and we're looking at a grocery store. I mean, we're looking to bring as many resources and many people together in a space to have a say on how our community handles our food, our health, and our nutrition, and how that gets distributed around.
Mm. And Kelvin, can you give me a sense of, since you're engaging and you're providing support to all of these different communities,
Mhm.
how are you building solidarity across communities, right? So are folks siloed? So let's say if you have, volunteers from Brownsville, are they only volunteering, there, or is there an opportunity for them to cross-pollinate and think about, collectively solutions to support the work and addressing, the specific need?
That's it. Thank you for that. So when we first started, we were Ocean Hill Brownsville Mutual Aid, and we were specifically focused on these two communities here. And for us, it was like, well, there are many other people across East Brooklyn specifically that oftentimes get forgotten about, and our volunteers cover all of East Brooklyn. So our delivery drivers specifically, when they get to delivery routes, some of the deliveries may be in East New York, some may be in Cypress Hills, one or two may be in Spring Creek. Then you end up in Brownsville, and on your way home, you hit Bed-Stuy. We have volunteers that live in Park Slope, that live in Prospect Heights, that live in Bushwick. We have people that are remote, that live in other states, that work with us, all to support the community that is here, that is in East Brooklyn. It's not necessarily about Brownsville, volunteers working in Brownsville and in East New York. We are a community, and we serve us all.
Mm. And somewhat related to that, I was curious about kind of like how are you coordinating all of this, right? What does your infrastructure look like? And how are you, I know that initially it was you and a group of folks that were putting in your own money and purchasing, food and supplies for folks, right? But how has that evolved or shifted over time? And how are you getting the support to be able to access all of these food resources and then deliver them?
Well, I will say, first of all, first and foremost, is not all me. There is an amazing team behind me of folks that volunteer their time day in and day out, week in, week out, that have been some there since the beginning. And it boggles my mind at how much folks give themselves and give their talents and their resources to others so freely and so willingly, without expecting anything in return. And really, those are the principles of mutual aid, right? Give
Mm-hmm.
what you can and take what you need, and we're all in it together and supporting each other. We have an operations manager who is a volunteer. All of our board members are also committee chairs, and they volunteer, and they give at least 5 hours a week, most of them, and some of them even more. We have delivery volunteers and coordinators, routing coordinators, social media, grant writers. I mean, these are all people that make this work, that live right here in this community, that want to make an impact. And I'm thankful that they have chosen to be a part of this organization.
And so I know that you're partnering with, a host of different organizations that provide the actual food supplies, right?
Mhm.
But how are you receiving funding from the city? Are you fundraising? Like, what does that look like?
So yeah, so we partner with the Christian Cultural Center currently, and they provide a lot of our pantry and dry goods. We are purchasing food from our farmers, an array of farmers upstate New York, specifically from Trinity Farms. Our farmers, David and Veronica, they have 30 acres of apple orchards, and then they have
Mm.
another 50 acres and 10 acres of regular produce and callaloo and collard greens and kale and corn and watermelon. And I can go on and on. We purchase
You're
from
making
them
me hungry,
weekly.
Kelvin.
They're Jamaican too, so
Oh, yes, Caribbean. Love it.
we purchase from them. We purchase from other farms across the state. We're looking to hopefully purchase from some of our community farms and our community gardens. We have been donating to them for some of their box programs, but we fundraise. We have not received any money from the city or the government. We have recently became a nonprofit. We are still 501c3 pending. So we currently are not eligible for city and government grants yet. So it's all been through our
Mm.
community. We have actually been very fortunate to receive our first grant from the J.M. Kaplan Fund. They saw something special in us and they gave us a grant to help us build our infrastructure and to incorporate and to get started on our sustainability mission. So we're thankful to them. But it's our community. Folks are donating their time and their money to make this work. We get a lot of anonymous donations in large amounts, and we are grateful for those too. And folks are doing it because they don't need, to be recognized for anything. They just want to give back and support. So thank you for that.
Yeah, that's terrific. Let's see. So I have a question coming in from Vernell. How can a Brownsville-based CBO collaborate with you to serve their clients? And who is the contact person?
So that would be me currently. So you could just reach out to me, email me, or community@eastbrooklynmutualaid.org. You can send an email there. It comes also to my email, so I'll be the first one to respond to it. I usually am.
Okay, wonderful. Let's see. We have some other
And on
questions.
that, we're
Oh,
actually
yeah.
partnering with another nonprofit organization upstate to provide some resources for our interrelated needs in our community that are non-food related. So we are going to start looking at other CBOs to work with to support more than just food. I think our communities deserve every opportunity to thrive and to grow as possible, and we want to be a part of that in any way that we can.
Mm, great. Thank you. Let's see. We have another question coming in, and that is, what is stopping grocery stores, fresh markets, and other businesses to meet the need in food deserts by opening up shop?
Profit.
Surely there, there's a part I want to hear more about that. And there's a part two to this question. I want to make sure that I share it. Surely there is a demand for these products. Does city planning and zoning influence these kinds of decisions? So, first part of the question, you said profit.
Yeah, in the work that I'm doing, and I'm seeing a lot of these grocery stores, the prices are high because they're meeting margins.
Mm,
They have to, they're profiting essentially. We're not looking to open a grocery store to profit. We're looking to open a grocery store to ensure that the prices are equitable and folks can afford it. What's the sense of having a business in a community where folks can't afford to shop there? You're not helping the community, you're hurting the community, and our communities deserve better than that.
that's right. Yeah, that's right. I mean, you're actually pressing against capitalism. How does that feel?
Feels great.
Feels great. Yeah.
Listen, it's because we deserve it, and all of the work that I do is guided in faith, and everything is God first for me, and all things that I do, I seek Him first, and I know that our communities deserve opportunities. We deserve a chance to thrive and to grow and to be successful and have opportunities for better health and for better wellness and access. And why not have places like a Black owned or a Black run marketplace, where like an Essex market or a Chelsea market in our community, where we can go to, and there are food vendors, and there's a small cafe and a grocery store and a culinary center and an event space, and we can just go and walk through and grab some food and sit down and eat. We deserve those things, and they need to be equitable so we can afford them, and for us, by us, at the end of the day.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. One of the things that I really love about, the mutual aid approach is that it's so community driven, and it takes us back to something that I often talk with my team about: our indigenous values, right?
Mm.
Our values of community, of creating our ecosystem, of supporting each other, right? Through the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think this is why the work that you do is so powerful. And there's so many people sending me text messages right now saying, oh, I want to get involved, how can I
Yeah.
help, where do I go to donate? So I'll be sure to put all of that information on up at the end
Please
for you.
donate, because we could absolutely, we want to ensure, for us it's about support, and we're investing into the farms where our Black farmers, and we're planning an Earth Day trip, a farm trip. Yeah, so we're going on Earth Day. It's April 22nd to 2022. We're going to take a trip up to the farm, and we're going to spend the day giving back to our farmers. We're going to have them kick their feet up and relax, and we're going to do the farming for them for the day. And I'm personally excited about that. I want to get up there and roll my sleeves up, and I want to harvest some apples and do some pruning. And they do so much for us to provide us with food, and it starts there.
Mhm.
It's the farms that provide us the food, the healthy, the fresh food, and we should be supporting them more. I want to support them more. So we're going to do that, and we're going to be inviting some folks to join us. We're working with some organizations, and we're going to be planning many of those throughout the year, because support shouldn't just be one time; it should be consistent. If they're growing food and putting their love and their soul and their heart into it, and it's for us, for their community, because that's their goal. Their goal is to feed
Mhm.
their communities, and our farmers come down here and they deliver weekly. And the folks, I ensure, when it was the springtime and the summertime, they would deliver plums and cherries and nectarines, and we would legit open the boxes and try them while the farmers are there. And when I tell you, right from the vine is always best for me.
Oh,
I mean, it
absolutely.
was it was it was amazing, and to see the reactions on the farmers' face with the people trying the food that they grew with their two hands, months in the ground. It was so satisfying, so wonderful, and I love that feeling of bringing folks joy and feeling that joy for myself. And this is why we do what we do, and we'll continue to do these things.
I also love the fact that you're connecting, the farmers to the folks that actually
Hmm.
benefit from the food, and then they're able to build relationships and connections to
You should
those
know where your
individuals,
food
to each
comes from.
other. That's right.
Yeah.
You should know where your food
Absolutely.
comes from, and you should know who is growing your food, right? And get to know who they are and their
Yeah,
core values. And I think that's
absolutely.
absolutely beautiful. I love that. So yeah, we need to talk offline to see how Power of Two can
Yes.
get in on this on April
Yes.
22nd, or whenever
Please, I
you
can't
have
wait. I
another
mean,
one.
they're such amazing folks. The farmers, I hold such a special place in my heart for farmers David and Veronica Houghton. They put so much love in themselves into what they do, and it's just them two and their daughter and their grandson CJ, who is the cutest little thing ever. Whose plans one day is to take over the farm. He walks
Nice.
around and he goes, mine, and he's like, what, 3? I think he's 3, between 3 and 5, and he says, mine. It's all mine. And I love that they're instilling that in him, and I want to support his growth as well. I want him to know that he has a community of people making sure that he is successful as a Black farmer also, even at this stage.
That's right. Nurturing
Yeah,
that vision
absolutely.
and that desire
Yeah,
to grow and care for the soil and grow things for others that are beneficial, that are healthy.
yeah, yeah.
Can I ask you, like, how did you connect with the folks at Trinity? What's the name of the
Trinity
farm?
Farm.
Trinity Farm. How did you connect with them?
Yeah, so we connected. So when we first started, we had a space in our community that we turned into our warehouse, and we were working out of there. It was a huge space for our operation. Through the mutual aid network that I'm involved in, we got connected to the Brooklyn Packers, and they were looking for space to do their project with the Get Food NYC program. They were packing and distributing 1,000 boxes a day. They were brought in by the Corbin Hill Food Project. So that's how all of those things came together. I was asked to come on as a director of operations for the Brooklyn Packers for that project. Corbin Hill had identified Black farmers that they wanted to work with, and Farmer David was one of them. And they were purchasing apples from him for the food boxes that we were putting together for Get Food NYC.
Okay, that's great.
After that program ended in October of 2020, I didn't want them to go back to not having support. Farmer David told me that before, he was hired to deliver apples, they were almost over $50,000 in debt. And didn't know if they were even going to survive the pandemic. And if it wasn't for them, being brought on to provide apples, because that's what they do. They have apple orchards and other things, but apples is their main. But that saved their farm. And for us continuing to work with them, even after October 2020, they're still able to survive. Their farmhouse needs a new roof. It needs a complete overhaul. They currently don't have a truck to make deliveries to us, so we haven't had deliveries in 3 weeks. So we're investing in getting them all of those resources. But if it wasn't for this continued support, it would be one more Black farmer that's no longer around.
Yeah, no, that's really powerful, right? How the universe just brought you all together, right?
Yeah, that was God. I don't say the universe, God, but for
God,
me,
yes.
I know where my help comes from.
But it's beautiful, right? Because everyone is benefiting, right?
Yeah.
And that's really, really terrific.
We're a community, and that's the way it should be.
That's the way it should be, exactly. Yeah. Let's see, we have a couple of more questions here. One is from Alejandro. Have you encountered any issues, language or accessibility issues when informing different communities about what EBMA can offer? If you have, what did you do to try to resolve these issues?
We've been very fortunate to have generous folks and volunteers from many different backgrounds, cultural, that have been able to help us out. Our communities are so diverse. We have the Black and brown folks, obviously. We have the Latino folks. We have the Caribbean folks. In the Canarsie, Flatland, Spring Creek area, we have Russian, Polish folks that we support. It's so diverse, but very fortunate enough to have wonderful people that say, this is my community. How can I help? And have stepped in, to help us translate, to be a resource. And we could always use more. So if there's anyone, we have folks that are Haitian Creole. We always need, people to help out with, anyone that has any resources that would just like to say, this is my community and what can I do to help? Please.
Fabulous, Kelvin. So our segment is coming to an end shortly. And I know, wish we could talk some more. But I want to give you an opportunity to share what would be your call to action for our listeners today.
We are very much supporting our farmers. We are in the early stages of building our community grocery store, collaborating with other stakeholders to build a neighborhood food hub in all of our neighborhoods, not just Brownsville, but our first vision is in Brownsville, and then Cypress Hills, East New York, Canarsie Flatlands, Flatbush. There are folks in Bedside that we're working with that already have plans to build something in Bedside, so we will support that. But, supporting any mission to provide food sustainability and access to our communities. So donations, supporting us monetarily is a great way to show your solidarity. Volunteering is also a great way. Spreading the word, resources and connections are always a great way to support. We wouldn't be able to do this work if it wasn't for our community of friends and organizations that have supported us, that have given us memberships to go wholesale shopping when we wanted to stop buying retail at the grocery store. There are people that can step in. You can step in any way to really help out. Donate. We have many ways to donate, and volunteer.
Wonderful. Thank you. Kelvin, thank you so much for joining us today, for talking with me, for your tremendous commitment to our communities. We're so grateful. Folks, stay tuned till the end, and we will put up a slide with all of the contact information of how you can donate and also get involved. To families watching and listening, if you have an unmet need, unmet food need, or know a friend, a neighbor that needs support, or if you would like to volunteer, we'll share contacts at the end. And to the policymakers who are watching, because I know you're watching or listening,
Pay attention.
that's right. I want to leave you with, since we talked about Martin Luther King before, I want to leave you with one of my favorite quotes of his, and that is that I have the audacity to believe that people everywhere can have 3 meals a day for their bodies, education and culture for their minds, and dignity, equality, and freedom for their spirits. So, all of you out there, please be audacious, be bold, stay safe and healthy, everyone.
I
Thank
love
you.
that. Amen. Thank you.